He's had one transfer window and he's bought in Flintstone and League Dean. Just chill out.
Hi there, welcome back to another Premier League Predictor episode. Today we're going to be covering off Aston Villa. Now, it has to be said that they've been doing a lot of their business early on in this window, so we've got a really good guest. We are joined by Billy from Total Screamers. But before we do that, make sure you subscribe to our channel, because 99% of you that watch this right now probably won't actually subscribe to us. So we do plead that you actually join us on this kind of little journey that we're doing as a pod. Even give us a like if you like this video, but more importantly, give us your thoughts as well as we go along. But before I also introduce Billy into this, I have to also caveat this by saying we're doing this on the 7th of July. Yes, the 7th of July. So yeah, do not shoot myself or Billy when we come to talk about Aston Villa. But most importantly, also just make sure you also look at our last episode that I did with Simon Robson on Wolves. I'm sure you'll appreciate understanding where Wolves are anyway, that's for sure. But Billy, privileged to have you on from the Total Screamers podcast. It must be said, I have to say, at the beginning of last season, I kind of thought Aston Villa were probably outsiders to potentially being in that top six. I really did fancy you guys, especially with the early business that Dean Smith did at the time, you know, despite the fact that Jack Grealish kind of moved on. I really had that kind of sense of optimism as well, because I think your CEO kind of was very transparent about what things were taking place at Aston Villa, and there seemed to be like some positive vibes. But yeah, it didn't turn out that well. And I think it has to be said, Steven Gerrard came in. Again, there was a rejuvenation to an extent. But again, there's been a lot of question marks about where he kind of sees the side. Do you think I've summarised that quite well for last season?
I think you've summarised it perfectly, to be honest with you, mate. Yeah, I think you have. I mean, I remember coming on this pod last year with Rory and predicting us to, I can't remember exactly where I predicted us, but I believe I said it was between us and Leeds, if not both, to kind of break up the Big Six. And sat here a year later, it's probably not the best prediction I've ever made.
No, it has to be said, though, even Leeds were kind of one of those teams that I thought would be in there purely because of Bielsa more than anything. So I was clearly blindsided by that as well, to be fair. But what do you think went wrong? Because obviously it seems like from the outlook anyway that you're building such a promising side, shall we say. You know, Liam Bailey, which we haven't mentioned at this point yet. I mean, he came with a reputation of being quite a good winger from Bayer Leverkusen. But again, he's someone that's flattered to deceive, I think it's fair to say, because I think it was one performance against Everton and everything else has been forgotten about him. That said, obviously, you know, Gerrard's come in, brought in his, to an extent, old guard with Coutinho. He got in Lucas Digne as well. So, you know, it seems like foundations are there. We have to also say that obviously there's a lot being made of Michael Beale as well, backroom staff, and he's moved on to QPR to be manager. But it seems like reading the forums, Aston Villa fans don't really care too much about that. They think they can still proceed. What's your views on that as well?
So I think the beginning of last season was just struck with. I mean, we had a very disrupted pre-season. We had a few games that had to be cancelled due to COVID, obviously. So we didn't really get the pre-season that we wanted. Ollie Watkins went off injured in our last pre-season game, so he wasn't ready for the beginning of the season. There we go, get my words out. And then I think just little tiny niggling injuries just all the way throughout, really, until Dean Smith went. I think the three signings of Bailey, Buendia and Danny Ings, when Dean Smith left, I don't think they'd played a minute together on the pitch. So, so yeah, it was tough. It was tough for Dean Smith. I'm a massive fan of Dean Smith, what he's done, what he did for the football club, everything. But it was time to go. I think he took us as far as he possibly could, and we was just in free for all. Five consecutive losses just can't happen, and there was no excitement to the way that we were playing either. It was almost like teams had found us out they'd found out the way that we play, and there was nothing else possible that we could do that would possibly change that. So I think we got rid of him at the right time, although very sad. Then we brought Steven Gerrard in, who I think has done a fantastic job, to be honest with you. I think since he came in, if you look at the league table in the time since he came in November, I think it was, we'd finished ninth, which is a decent season if you think about it like that. So the damage was already done. Really, it would have been nice to have finished ninth in the actual season, in the actual league, which I think with a few more points towards the back end of the season where we shouldn't have dropped points, I think it'd have been very possible. But we just had so many inconsistent moments last season, just from pre-season and the disruptiveness to the injuries, and everything was just so inconsistent. The performances were constantly inconsistent. We were constantly a one-half team, whether it be the first half or the second half. In one of the halves, we just wouldn't perform. That's where we concede the goals. So it was very frustrating. And that even followed into when Steven Gerrard came over as well, of course. So it's not all Dean Smith's fault. But made big, important signings in January, getting Coutinho on loan initially, now permanent, and Luca Dean, which is a fantastic signing. He's so good, and he's a massive upgrade on Matt Target, no matter what the Newcastle fans want to say. He's a massive, massive upgrade. And yeah, to get Coutinho over the line and done permanently and for £17 million as well. I mean, it's a steal just for the name alone. You know, people are going to come in just to want to play with Coutinho. So as well as having the Steven Gerrard pool, you've also got the option or the possibility, should I say, to play with Philippe Coutinho, which I think we kind of had with Jack Grealish as well, to a certain extent, when he was on top of the world, really untouchable in our eyes. And, you know, if you come to Villa, you can play with Jack. It's now we've got Phil. Get rid of the student, bring in the master, as I said.
On that Gerrard point, so I think he came with a lot of fanfare. I think, as you've alluded to, he's probably managed to pull maybe a few more players that maybe potentially with Dean Smith you wouldn't have been able to attract. And that might be a bit harsh on Dean Smith, to be fair. But obviously, I think people respect Stevie Gerrard a bit differently to Dean Smith in that respect. Now, towards the end of the season, what I was seeing a lot of from Villa fans were a bit of murmurs around his tactics. In particular, it seemed like he didn't have a settled side. There was times where he was kind of choosing between Danny Ings and Watkins to play as a centre forward, and then he tried to play them both together at some points, you know. So do you think that kind of helps you for the season ahead? Because it feels like he was almost consolidating and realizing this is the best that we're going to get right now, and trying to work out which players he's going to have maybe for the season ahead, and maybe just work out formations. How did it play out in your head anyway?
Yeah, so for me, the back end of last season was experimental time. Let's experiment. Let's try and see what the best squad is, the best players, their best positions, and just experiment. We weren't going down. We're not getting Europe. It's a null and void to the end of the season. Let's just try and do our best and get as best results as possible. And I think we got our best results when we played Ollie Watkins and Danny Ings as a two with Coutinho or Buendia in behind. It just means that you're then leaving out Coutinho or Buendia. Which is, I mean, to have someone like either of them to bring off the bench and have an impact is massive, you know, and it's a real incentive of where this club wants to go. You want to have those options coming off the bench, don't you? But yeah, I was very much in the camp of let's just see where we end up. But we're not going to do anything. It's not Steven Gerrard's squad. He's had one transfer window and he's brought in Philippe Coutinho and Luca Dean. Just chill out. I think a lot of fans of, not just Villa fans, but fans of every club want success and they want it now. sometimes you've got to be patient. When Steven Gerrard went in at Rangers, he did nothing for the first 2 seasons. That third season, they won the league and went invincible as well.
Yeah.
So he's done it before. He's done it before. I think you just need to give him time. You need to bring in the players that he wants to bring in. You need to give him time to create that philosophy and to have the impact on the players. And I think we'll have that next season. He's brought in the Boubacar Kamara, a fantastic signing, a really highly rated defensive midfielder. A defensive midfielder is what we've been crying out for about 2 or 3 years now. So yeah, it's nice to have that one finally over the line, and also another centre back in Diego Carlos, who's massively highly rated over here in Spain.
Yeah,
he was in Seville today for a saying goodbye press conference, and the reaction from the fans from the club. I think when you get a reaction like that they're just absolutely gutted that a player's left, he's going to be a good player, isn't he? So
yeah, exactly.
I think next season's for me, it's another experimental season. It's another season of let's just try and do our best. Let's try and break that top 10. Break that top 10. We've succeeded. And then give him another season if we do that, and then see how things progress. I mean, you've got to be patient as football fans. Nothing comes overnight. Just sometimes, you just need to sit back, have a beer, and just relax.
Yeah, you've obviously stolen my thunder when we're talking about your kind of transfer marks that you've actually made so far. So the likes of Kamara, which I think surprised a lot of people because you made that really quite quickly as well in terms of move. So again, it kind of reminded me of that move that you did with Danny Ings. It was incredible that you kept it quite quiet, quite secretive, but you did it to a point. So I think that's the kudos that you guys seem to get, is you seem to get this job done quite quickly. But yeah, obviously you've also signed Ashley Young for another season, which feels like just experience, making sure that there's a wise head around the place. Yeah. I mean, apart from the ones that you've made so far, where do you think Villa needs strengthen? And in particular, is there one area that you're crying out for maybe reinforcements?
Yeah, I still think we need another midfielder. Steven Gerrard gave an interview on Villa TV saying that we're still in the market for another midfielder. There's no real names that are being bandied about, which is very strange for Villa. Normally we've got loads of different ITK rumours and everything's going off, but it's weird. There's just nothing. Conor Gallagher's a name that's been going around, but that's just because he could be leaving Chelsea. And he's the kind of player that Villa may want or may need. But it's a weird one. I think there's just nothing. Every time you see that little strange ITK account come out of nowhere, you're like, oh, we're going to get someone.
It does feel like maybe striker is the area. And I say that loosely because obviously Morelos from Rangers, he's been linked a number of times, just down to the connections, really. But again, he's a player that I feel would do quite well at that Premier League club. But just in general, if we take him out of the question, I think there is an opportunity there, because it feels like, despite the fact that you've got Danny Ings and Ollie Watkins there leading the line, it does feel like you're missing a goal scorer, or kind of maybe someone that's more naturalised to being in the box. Do you feel the same way?
I do and I don't. I do think we need another forward. However, we've also got Cameron Archer, who's a really highly rated youngster. Scored a few good goals for us in the cup competitions last season, a header in particular against Chelsea, a hat-trick against Barrow. Had a good second half of the season on loan in the Championship at Preston as well, scoring goals for fun over there, really. So I would like him to be given an opportunity. I think he'll have his opportunity during pre-season, and then we'll reevaluate whether we want to keep him round or send him out on loan again. And I think if we do send him out on loan again, he has to bring someone else in. Jonathan David, apparently we're admirers of him as well for a long time, even under Dean Smith. That'd be an interesting one. I can't claim to know too much about him, if I'm being totally honest with you, but from what I've seen and the the stat pages you see, he seems to be a pretty decent player.
Definitely. I mean, his record for Lille has been incredible, to be fair. I think he's got the right attributes for the Premier League. Just a question, I suppose, would he be looking forward to that move? Would he want that move? He'd probably say yes, to be fair, because I think Villa are a step above Lille. But question marks whether he actually wants to move. That's the other thing, really.
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, I'm going to sound biased here, but if a Lille player isn't wanting to move to the Premier League or to Aston Villa in particular, who we've got a great project going on. You know, Boubacar Kamara could have gone to Man United. He could have gone anywhere he wanted, really. But the project with Steven Gerrard, with Philippe Coutinho, it was too much for him. So he wanted to join. He wanted to join us, and I think a lot of other players would have done the same in a similar situation. So I think if we went out and made a bid for Jonathan David, I think it, well, obviously has to be accepted first and foremost, doesn't it? But I think he would be open to the move. I think he'd definitely be open to the move. But a player like that's not going to come cheap either.
No.
And we can't really afford to pay 30 plus million potentially if we're still going to have Ollie Watkins, who cost us 30 million, and Danny Ings, who cost us 30 million. So I think we'd have to get let one of them go if we were going to bring another big name striker in. And you know what? I'm really excited for Ollie Watkins this year. He's hired himself a finishing coach, apparently, a personal finishing coach. He seems in good nick. He seems like he's in shape. So yeah, I think Ollie Watkins is in for a good season.
But Billy, I'm going to push you. I appreciate it's very early in the season, but if we were to say hypothetically the season ends in terms of transfer market, where do you think Aston Villa would finish up right now?
If we're looking at it right now, this Villa side as it is such a hard one to predict. I've been thinking all day about this question and how I'm going to answer it, because I really have no idea where we're going to predict, what we're going to do, how we're going to play. It really is, everything is so unknown at the minute.
Yeah.
And I'd hopefully after a couple of the preseason games, I'd have some kind of idea. But I think our target anyway has just got to be to get in the top 10. If we get in the top 10, it's a good season, and it's something to then build on. You know, finishing 14th. You look at the players that we've signed, and you wonder, why do they want to join a team that has finished in 14th? You know, Brentford finished above us, and no disrespect to Brentford, but look at the size of the two clubs; it's uncomparable. So we've got to finish in the top 10. I think we'll have enough to do so. It's just about whether we do and whether we get the results on the pitch, and that's the big question, isn't it? Really, the $1 million question.
I think from that point of view, I do agree with you, though. I think Villa are going to be somewhere in that top 10 mix. I think it's fair to say. I think maybe a cup run couldn't go amiss as well, potentially. I think you guys have good players in that team. You know, I'm thinking the likes of Jacob Ramsey as well, who excelled last season. I think he came to the forefront last year. You seem to have a strong back line. Granted, you did reinforce in the windows as well, but yeah, I mean, Martinez in goal must be a godsend sometimes when you compare it to the previous Villa keepers you've had in the past anyway. But yeah, no, absolutely blessed to have you on here, Billy. And Lille fans, if you do want to hound Billy, let us know in the comments below. But more importantly, let us know, where do you think Villa will end up? But for now, many thanks to Billy, and we will see you at the next episode. Take care. Golazo!